Hey, my friends. So today we're going to talk a little bit about just public speaking apprehension and effective delivery. Um, this will actually probably be one of our longer quote unquote lectures or conversations. I love talking about public speaking delivery. I really do. I'm weird. But one of the things that I want us to understand is that public speaking apprehension is normal. I know that a lot of you probably hate public speaking. I get it. I promise I get it. I used to hate it as well. I really did. As you look at public speaking, it makes sense to be nervous because it's a very vulnerable activity. It's an activity where you have barriers that are broken down. You are exceptionally vulnerable in front of an audience because you're portraying your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts. And so it makes sense to be a little nervous. That's understandable. Public speaking apprehension is very manageable, but there are some of you who probably experience greater levels of it than others, and that's okay as well. Just a stat I wanted to throw out: 76% of experienced public speakers suffer from public speaking apprehension. 76%. Even I mean, and granted, keep in mind, I speak in public all the time, right? At least in classes and other things. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I still get nervous. I still have little pangs in my stomach. I still, question my overall effectiveness and still wonder if people care about what I'm saying. So it's normal. It's normal to be nervous. It's normal to have apprehension. That's okay. So just know that. I want to just make that very clear from the get-go that it's understandable if you have nerves. How is public speaking like riding a bicycle for the first time? I ask that somewhat rhetorically, but I also want you to think through just learning how to ride a bike. I remember my dad took me to Tiffin Elementary in Chillicothe, Ohio. That's where he went to elementary school, and that's where he took me to learn how to ride a bike because that's where he learned how to ride a bike. And so for a couple days a week, for several weeks, we would go down and he would try to teach me how to ride a bike, and he would hold on to the back, and he would kind of steer me along, and then as soon as he would let go, boom, fall over. Public speaking is a lot like that. You will practice and you will practice and you will practice. And a lot of times you'll feel like, man, I'm not getting anywhere and I'm just constantly falling over. But now, if you hop on a bike, if you ever learned how, you can ride it seamlessly and you'll never forget because you just know what to do. And it almost becomes second nature and it almost becomes muscle memory. And so public speaking is a lot like riding a bike because you just kind of sit there and you have to practice to get better. And I think we automatically assume that public speaking is this skill that is innate and everybody's good at it. And all I have to do is just like talking and I don't have to worry about thinking through what I'm going to say. It's not that at all. So I want you to just recognize that practice makes perfect when it comes to public speaking. Just like riding a bike, you must practice. Let's just talk about just public speaking apprehension for just a second. There are a lot of different elements of public speaking apprehension. So a lot of you will experience very physical pangs. And that's what I do. I mean, it's not overwhelming, but my stomach kind of twinges up a little bit when I know I'm about to give a speech. And I get nervous. Cognitive, you kind of sit there and you think through worst case scenarios of, man, I'm going to blow it. People aren't going to care. I'm going to mess up. I mean, I just messed up 60 seconds ago. Happens all the time. It's okay. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's a perfect speaker. The emotional is just this constant anxiety where, some of you for 24, 48, 72 hours prior to a speech, that's all you think about and you just can't stop. So I just want to let you know that these are normal and that's okay. We have to learn how to control them, and we have to learn that as we're anticipating and confronting and adapting to the situation of speaking, that it's okay to have these symptoms and it's okay to have these causes of apprehension. Part of the process is training your body to respond effectively to what your body is doing. So it's being able to take deep breaths if you notice your heart rate increasing. It's able to kind of have positive self-talk instead of negative self-talk where you're, it's not this mind over matter type thing, but in some ways it is, where you're picturing effectiveness as opposed to this negative, man, I'm going to blow it, I'm going to stink. You're going to do a PRPSA, which is basically just this public speaking apprehension test, and kind of respond to potential levels of apprehension. And I want you just to think through as you're doing that, specifically, what are my levels of apprehension? How does that play itself out in me? I am anxious to my core anyway. And so with speaking, I do sometimes think, days at a time ahead of when I'm going to speak. And then I also have that just physical pain of stomach at times. So I've learned how to deal with that. I've learned how to take my adrenaline and overcome that, but that also comes with practice. Just a few specific techniques to overcome PSA. Allow time to prepare. I think it's always interesting when people say, well, I don't need to practice. I can just go up there and wing it. You can't. You really can't. You're crafting these outlines for your, project 1 speech, and you will for project 2 speech. If you can outline and prepare more effectively what you're going to say, then if you do happen to get tripped up, you can kind of bring yourself back to the overall goal and the overall map that you're trying to accomplish. You can practice the speech out loud. You can visualize success and use positive self-talk. Mostly, honestly, I think it just takes practice, and I don't think it's rocket science. I don't think we have to overthink it. But it's like the basketball player who shoots 1,000 free throws a day. They're going to become a better free throw shooter. It's just muscle memory. It's inevitable. They're practicing the same things over and over and over again. I like to think through just the understanding that speaking in public is a conversation with the audience. Doesn't look identical to a one-on-one conversation, but if I can approach my speech as though I'm having a conversation with the audience, I believe that I will be more effective, and I believe that the audience will just kind of appreciate that particular speech more. So it's not as if I'm talking down to you, but it's as if we're all engaging in the same conversation. And maybe I speak for 40 minutes, or maybe I speak for 4. It doesn't matter. It's still a conversation. Now, it's not a one-way conversation because your audience is still going to give you feedback, whether that's a nodding of the head, whether that's asking questions, whether that's nodding off, which I know some of you do in my classes. There's always feedback happening. So we need to get over this fact that it's just you speaking to the audience and they're not reciprocating. They are reciprocating. And the best public speakers, after they do this a couple times, and by a couple, I mean a couple hundred, you learn to kind of read your audience and figure out how you can change and tailor your message to kind of more effectively reach your audience. So I always view public speaking as a conversation. Is it more formal? Absolutely. Is it more logical? Yes. Is it more prepared? Of course. But it's still a conversation. And those of you who love going out with a friend and having a cup of coffee should love public speaking because it's similar. It's very similar. I want you just to think through, this is not necessarily an element of public speaking delivery, but I just want you to think through what is the perfect audience member. What are their characteristics? They listen, right? They respond through nodding, through eye contact. They're engaged. You can tell that they care about the material. I want you all to act like perfect audience members when you're listening to your classmates give a speech. I would prefer you act like perfect audience members when you listen to me, but I know that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. But especially when your classmates give a speech, I want you to be the perfect audience member. I want you to respond to them. I want you to give them feedback and let them know that you're for them and that you want them to succeed. Just some presentation and delivery steps. We aren't going to go over these. These are found in your book, but basically you need to round the cycle as you think through giving a speech. From selecting your purpose and your topic to actually delivering your speech, there is a process that you must go through. And that process is kind of bookended with preparation and execution, right? To where you're preparing well. You're figuring out, what do I need to say? How do I need to say that? You're rehearsing, and then you're executing, ultimately, your speech. A few elements, and we've talked a little bit about this when we look at just evaluating speeches and kind of what we're looking for when we critique and evaluate speeches. A couple, overarching elements that I think are important. Number one is content, so it's the actual ideas. What are you trying to accomplish? And then what evidence are you using to back up that main idea? Right now, I want you to think through simplicity. I don't want you to be cute. I don't want you to be overly funny. I don't want you to try to manipulate your audience for numerous reasons. But I want you to think through, how can I most effectively craft my message? Ultimately, what is my purpose? What am I trying to accomplish? And What evidence, stories, people, places, events, who knows, do I need to back up those main ideas? Ultimately, you must think through, what is your primary purpose? What is your primary message? And at times your message will seem repetitious. That's okay. Because ultimately what you want to try to do is communicate your message as effectively as possible to your audience. Two elements of structure, and this is the same as when we're writing an essay, but you have a macro structure, which is just the general framework and general organization. That's your intro, that's your body, that's your conclusion, your transitions. And then the microstructure is the specific language that you use and your style choices. Are you clear? Are you inclusive? Are you vivid? I like to look at speaking as a roadmap. Intro, tell me what you're going to tell me. Body, tell me. Conclusion, tell me what you told me. That's it. We don't need to overthink it. But then along this roadmap, we have transitions. We have certain phrases and certain sentences that bring everything together and kind of intertwine it, so that it's not as though we're jumping from point to point, but we're slowly kind of being guided from point to point so that everything fits. As you look at macro structure, just a few things about an intro that I want you to include in your introductions. First of all, an attention catcher. So whether that's a joke, whether that's a humorous story, please do not use rhetorical questions. I hate them with a passion. Anything that you can do to kind of make this interesting to us. Thesis statement is a one-sentence summary of the speech. And then I like to a lot of times see a thesis statement kind of tied into a preview statement also, where you're kind of telling us a little bit about the main points and what's coming next. And then just a listener relevance link. Why should we care about this? I think a lot of times we assume that if we're engaging, we're going to be effective, but a lot of times it's content related. If the content doesn't mean anything to me, I don't care, and I have no reason to listen. So make sure that you're bringing to bear why this information is important to us. The body, explain each main point, develop with evidence, and then add additional listener relevance links. And then, as I told you before, we have these transitions that tie together the main points and kind of bring closure and introduce every main point and our intro and our conclusion. So everything's intertwined and everything's coming together. We can look a little bit at organization of main points. I think most of you, if we're looking at a persuasive speech, a lot of times we'll look at like a problem solution, problem cause solution, or even a Monroe's motivated sequence type organizational structure. Informative could be chronological, could be topical, who knows. But how you organize your main points should make the most sense to how your argument needs to be effectively communicated to bring about just the clearest understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. Just a brief introduction to Monroe's motivated sequence. Attention, you're bringing attention to the particular topic. Why is it important? Next is remember, this is more for persuasive speech. Next, you're establishing a need. What's the problem? What are we trying to accomplish? Satisfaction is kind of saying, how can we fix the problem? Visualization is kind of looking at, if we fix the problem, here is what our world would look like. And then action is a specific, tangible action step that your audience can accomplish as they walk out of the room from listening to your speech. What do I specifically, personally need to do to help fix this problem? Transitions, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but transitions are words, phrases, or sentences that connect various parts of a speech. That's it. They add clarity. They add closure, and also preview and introduce different main points. You can use them in a lot of different functions, a lot of different ways, but specifically in between your intro and your body, in between your body and conclusion, and then in between main points to bring about cohesion to your overall speech. Macrostructure, again, thesis statement. One of the things most important that one of the most important things to understand about a conclusion is that you're not offering up new information. You're summarizing. So you're restating your thesis. You're giving us a summary of your main points, and then you're offering up a clincher. Please do not be that person who says, thanks, that's it, I'm done. That's not a clincher. So whether it's a story that's kind of been progressing throughout your entire speech and you're finishing the story, whether it's an additional quote, whether it's an action step, I don't care what it is, but give us something that reinforces your speech in a positive and memorable way. I want you to be creative here. I want you to step outside your comfort zone and recognize that it's not okay to just say, thanks, that's it, I'm done. Any questions? I hate those conclusions. I walk away forgetting everything that you just talked to me about. With intros, just some pitfalls. People apologize. Hey, I want to apologize. I'm a little sick today, so you can kind of hear, my snotty voice. Just speak. Don't apologize for your lack of experience. Don't apologize for your monotone voice. Overcome it. Overcome it. Conclusions, some pitfalls. People introduce new material. I don't like when you do that. A conclusion is to summarize. Don't introduce new things. Don't drag your speech out. And don't water down or dilute your position. It's really easy to do all of those. So make sure that you're avoiding those like the plague. You will have to do some outlines. We're not going to talk a lot about these right now, but just recognize there are 3 different types of outlines, specifically a preparation outline, a formal outline, and a speaking outline. Of these 3, a speaking outline is usually one that is less detailed and more focused on specific elements of delivery and delivery cues. Microstructure, we've talked a lot about language and being clear and vivid and creative. Make sure that you use inclusive language. We, not just I. Make sure that you're vivid. You paint us a portrait with your words, that you don't just sit there and offer up very bland, very vague statements, but really utilize the English language. Now, remember also, for me, I'm not impressed by 8-syllable words. So I want you to make sure that you're painting me a portrait, but I don't necessarily need you to sit there and click through Microsoft Office and find synonyms that are too long. You're painting a portrait for us, but you're doing so in a way that adds to the message, doesn't detract from it. Effective delivery, just with your voice, some elements to go through here. You want to be intelligible. You want to be understood. You want to be conversational so that your audience doesn't feel like you're talking at them, but talking to them and with them. And then you want to be expressive. You want to add energy, vocal variety, pitch, rate. You want to stress important ideas. You want to be repetitious if need be. Body, make sure that you're looking at us, engaging with us. If you have to look at a forehead, I understand for now. But I really want you to try to engage with your audience members and look at them and try to figure out, can you read what they're thinking? Can you truly evaluate their feedback? Make sure that you're giving facial expressions that add to the message. I think a lot of times we utilize nonverbals in such a way that detracts from our message. We want to add to that. And we want to use our nonverbals to reinforce what we're talking about. You want to be poised. You don't want to be leaning on a podium. You don't want to be slouching. You don't want to have your hands in your pockets. You want to have your feet shoulder width apart, your knees slightly bent, and then not shifting your weight. A lot of you get in the habit of looking like you're at a junior high dance, so you're shifting and moving. Avoid that. It's distracting. Gestures, we want to avoid distracting mannerisms, so that overly talking with our hands, we want to avoid that. And we want to utilize our gestures to reinforce our message. Just some visual delivery elements. I'm not going to do a ton of this or talk about it right now. Professional dress, formal attire. You want to make sure that your dress and your attire adds to your credibility and does not detract from it. You can read through the rest of these. I do believe that they're important, but I don't necessarily think that we need to go over all of them right now. Just some summary thoughts. Remember, you want to be intelligible. You want to be understood. You want to be conversational so that your audience feels as though you're engaging with them. You want to be extemporaneous. What that means is that you don't want to memorize your speech fully, but you also don't want to under-prepare. You want to make sure that you have an outline and you want to have ideas and thoughts and a direction overall that you want to go. You want to be expressive. You want to utilize vocal inflection. You want to be energetic. You want to reinforce areas and ideas where they need reinforcement. And then also you want to connect. You want to engage with your audience to the best of your ability. That is a lot. It is a lot to talk about, but that's just a brief overview of delivery and of some elements that we can utilize when we're trying to deliver our messages most effectively. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please just let me know. I apologize, this one was a little longer than normal, but hopefully you've kind of gained a greater understanding of delivery elements that you personally can focus on to be more effective.